Howdy bars, it's so good to be here again to talk about films. And today we have quite the emotional powerhouse to talk about. To Land Unknown is the latest film from Danish Palestinian filmmaker Matti Fleifel, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, who is known for telling stories of Palestinians in exile. And even if this film is a fictional story, the seed that led to the inception of this drama is actually based on a true event. In fact, the concept of this film has been in gestation for roughly 11 years. To Land Unknown paints a vivid picture of the everyday struggle in the life of a refugee. Indeed, we go deep into what it feels like to be inside someone's soul who is in exile. This is as scrappy of an experience as you're going to find on the big screen. And this is definitely not an easy film to watch. It is deeply disheartening because at their core, our protagonists, these two cousins, Chatilla and Reda, are basically good family-oriented men who are trying to scrounge enough cash on the streets of Athens to make their way in Germany. They have the dream of opening this family cafe where they can provide for their family in a much less hostile environment. It is a noble aspiration, but unfortunately without any proper paper or employment, they are left to resort to petty crimes. In fact, the film basically opens with this purse robbery. And as you can imagine, it is a very perilous life that only gets more complicated due to Reda's heroin addiction, which we don't actually get too much backstory into how he started that addiction, but him being the more intimate and emotional character of the two cousins, I imagine he's trying to bury a lot of the horrors and fears that live deep inside him. And in fact, before the film started, the cinema's usher actually gave us a trigger warning in regard to that drug use. Though I will say it's not necessarily overly graphic in that regard. You won't see any detailed look of a needle going to an arm or any such unsavory details. However, the emotional resonance is off the charts. That's where the film really packs a punch, and on numerous occasions it really got under my skin. Closing my eyes, I vividly recall this close-up on Reda's body, and this moment shows something that goes much more beyond the suffering from the drug use, though that included, of course. I find that it translates this feeling of deep emotional trauma, and perhaps I am reading a bit too much in detail over here, but we are witnessing the shuddering of Reda's body and we don't actually see his face. We're kind of focused on his chest and we do see his tattoo. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it looked like a broken piece of glass. And in my mind, I was thinking that it's kind of this like shrapnel that's kind of tormenting his soul, because it was a very painstaking moment to just witness, to see him breathing, to see him suffering, and just see all that emotional turmoil going on inside him. Powerful stuff in terms of cinematography, and a great case of show don't tell. There are actually quite a few moments in this film that in terms of cinematography I thought were remarkable. For example, there are many close-ups in the film where I felt like I was peering into the soul of Chatilla, piercing through that seemingly impenetrable veil. Without question, he's the more reliable and stoic of the two, but in these moments we can see the conflicting emotions and the moral dilemma raging inside him. And there's a shot later on in the film that features this kind of uncanny mirror that just elevates that tension even further. And then there's a magnificent vista shot of the city of Athens where we not only see the city, but the sky itself is lit up with pink and purple hues. Absolutely breathtaking. And speaking of breathtaking, the last long shot of this film, oh my God, absolutely spellbinding, and it literally tore my heart out. In fact, a few of us at the cinema were on the verge of tears at the end of this film. Powerful stuff, to say the least. I really have to sing high praise to the casting of this film. Our two protagonists in particular play off each other beautifully. Though they share a deep bond, temperamentally, they're quite different from each other, which actually makes for some really spicy and dynamic drama. In fact, I was on the edge of my seat the whole film. And the supporting cast is equally efficient. My personal favorite is this young kid they meet on their journey called Malik. And so even though I was really invested in their journey, throughout the whole film I had generally mixed emotions because of the morally complicated situations we constantly found ourselves in. And even the protagonists themselves started questioning their own moral validity, wondering if maybe they have become bad guys in the end. And even Chatilla, in a moment of weakness later on in the film, likens himself and Reda to that of animals. And unfortunately there is some truth to that, because let's face it, these guys are not exactly heroes. And it wouldn't be incorrect to liken the structure of this film to that of a crime drama. At times it feels like Matti Fleifel is taking a feather from Martin Scorsese's hat. And I mean that in the best way possible. And though it's not exactly their fault that life has dealt them this hand, in fact, in many ways it's deeply unfair that they find themselves in this situation, but even so, the schemes they chose to pull off in this film, Jesus Christ. If nothing else, it makes me appreciate this cozy life that I have here in Canada, and even with all the stress and complications that show up even in my life, I can go to bed easy tonight knowing that I do not live along a knife's edge like these guys do. So as challenging as this film was, I'm glad I got to experience it because it gave me a very in-depth look into the life of a refugee in exile. This is an incredibly compelling and gripping piece of cinematic drama, which is why I'm ranging from 8.5 to 9 out of 10. And I will say there's not too many cinemas playing this film in Montreal. which is a little disappointing. I guess it's still too taboo to talk about the realities of the war and its effect on Palestinian life. Without question, it is a lot easier to go just check out an MCU film and turn off your brain for roughly 2 hours. But as far as I'm concerned, this is an unmissable film, and if you are willing to engage with such complicated topics, I think you're in for a remarkable film. So with all of that being said, wishing you and your loved ones nothing but the best. Take care and talk to you soon.